You might be excellent at your job. You might negotiate deals, manage teams, and communicate with precision in every professional setting you walk into. But what happens when you come home?
So you can communicate and negotiate really well at work, but you're failing at home to the point that it causes a divorce. Not always, right? There's other things, but very, very frequently, it is broken communication.
Today's guest is Alice Shikina, mediator, arbitrator, trained actor, and author of the upcoming book, Don't Sleep on the Couch, Winning More Arguments Without Losing Your Marriage. Alice has spent her entire career inside the most emotionally charged conversations people have: divorce mediations, workplace disputes, and relationship breakdowns. And she has seen the same pattern play out over and over again.
The reason why your kids are walking all over you is because you need to be a better negotiator.
In this conversation, Alice breaks down why the skills that make us effective at work seem to disappear the moment we walk through the front door, and what we can actually do about it. And one of my favorite parts of the episode is when she explains why de-escalation does not start during the conflict. It actually starts long before one ever happens.
The de-escalation does not start at the point of conflict. It starts prior to there being any kind of a conflict. That is critical.
She makes the case that most relationship fights aren't actually about what they appear to be about. If you've ever felt unheard at home or been told that you weren't listening, this episode is for you. This episode is brought to you by Granola, Shopify, HomeServe, and whatnot. If you want to stay fully present in every meeting while still walking away with clear, structured notes, try Granola. Try it free for 3 months at granola.ai/Kwame. If you own a home, HomeServe administers plans that cover the repairs your regular insurance doesn't. Plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and more. Enroll today for 50% off your first year at homeserve.com/Kwame. If you're building a business or just looking to sell more, Whatnot is the largest live shopping marketplace in the country. Download the Whatnot app today and get free shipping on your first order. Just search WHATNOT Whatnot in the App Store and start scoring amazing deals. Ready to launch or grow your business? Start with Shopify, the commerce platform behind millions of entrepreneurs worldwide. Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/Kwame. When you think about everything that you have in the book, what is the part of the book that gives you the most energy, that you're most excited about?
I think I just love the fact that the paradigm that you can actually negotiate in your relationship, because I feel like people don't think of it that way. Anytime you use the word negotiation, people think of business, they think of sales. No one ever thinks about, let me go negotiate with my wife or my husband. Just that concept alone is, to me, very exciting.
I love it. I agree with you 100%. And it's funny because when I talk to people about this and I mention it, one thing that they often say is, well, wouldn't it be annoying to negotiate everything, or wouldn't it like make everything transactional? So there's a fear that people have that using negotiation skills might make things worse, or, kill the flame, steal the love, whatever it happens to be. What would you say to a person who responds in that type of way?
Well, I would say that anytime you want to get on the same page about anything, that would be a negotiation. Like if I were to say, where should we go eat for dinner? And I say, let's go have Thai. And they go, I just had Thai yesterday. Can we go have Italian? And I'm like, it's too heavy in pasta. Let's not do that. That's a negotiation, right?
Yes. Yeah. And you know what's funny, Alice? So whenever I present, one of the slides I love to have, and I the way that I present, you use an app. So you could actually engage. So you could engage in polls, ask questions, and the answers show up on the screen. So I define negotiation, and then I say, give me examples of your personal and professional negotiations. When are you having them? And then the thing that comes up most frequently is dinner. It's not breakfast. It's not lunch. It is no matter where I am in the world. Everybody says dinner. And so I say, look at the screen. The majority of the negotiations are with the people who are closest to you, your boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, whoever it happens to be. Kids come up a lot too.
Yep.
And so we're negotiating all the time. It's just a question of whether or not we're doing it well. And I think the one of the things that holds people back is their perception of what a negotiation is. They always think about it as something transactional and focused on just value extraction.
Right.
And that perspective holds people back.
Right. And I also like to tell people, they're like, oh, my kids are the worst because they're like, constantly asking for everything. And I feel like I'm, getting trod on. And I always say to people, the reason why your kids are walking all over you is because you need to be a better negotiator.
Oh, so right. You're so right. And so for you, because this is a space that you have been in for a while as an advocate, as somebody who's done countless mediations, now as an arbitrator too. So you've seen this from so many different angles, and you could have written so many different types of books. So what made you feel so called to write this one on that topic?
Because of exactly what you said, which is that people can negotiate really, really well and very effectively when it comes to business negotiations. And yet, when they walk through the front door and someone is hangry and I don't know, like things are going sideways, all of a sudden your business acumen, your ability to negotiate and get what you want, like that is somehow left at the office. And all of a sudden you're at home and having arguments and having fights. And as a divorce mediator, I do a lot of divorce mediations. There are so many people who are super successful in business and they're still getting a divorce. And many times it's due to communication. So explain that disconnect. So you can communicate and negotiate really well at work, but you're failing at home to the point that it causes a divorce. Not always, right? There's other things, but very, very frequently it is broken communication.
Let's explore this, because this is something that so many people have experienced. And I bet the person listening can say, oh yeah, sometimes it feels like I have the best version of myself for everybody that is outside of my home. So let's try to dig into what that is, because the deeper we can understand it, perhaps the better we could be with circumventing that problem.
Yes, absolutely. So, I think that the closer someone is to, the more emotions there are, and the more emotional something is to, the more handicapped you are, like with your intellect in the moment of upset, right? Because it could happen even at work. If something at work is really triggering for you and you feel super passionate about it and someone is just, putting you down for it, you might find yourself in the same position, but very, very frequently at home with your intimate partners, with your children, even sometimes with your parents if they live with you, right? You're grown, you're adult, they're getting older, now they live with you. And now they continue to treat you as if you're 18 years old when you might be 60, right? And so that just really triggers people. And so that emotion where they go, where they're flooded with either irritability, frustration, anger, that is going to basically stop your ability to communicate, because it is stopping you from listening to the other side. And you can't have an effective negotiation once listening stops.
Yes, it's critical. It's critical. And I think when it comes to these conversations, it can be kind of scary sometimes when you recognize that disconnect where you say, okay, I have skills at work when it comes to communication. As soon as I walk through the door, I lose those skills. And the point that you made is true. It's critical. It's the emotionality, because your skills will be hampered by your inability to manage your emotions. And what I like about this is that we are not running away from the fact that there are emotions. We're saying, hey, they exist. We have to wrestle with them. And I think that's really scary. because a lot of people go into these conversations hoping that they can eliminate the emotions. And sometimes they even convince themselves that they are not being emotional when it is clear to everybody watching them that they are emotional. And then it's that denial of the emotionality that leads to the inability to manage it, because you cannot manage that which you deny exists. So I
Right.
think just acknowledging it and owning it is important. But again, let's explore why that is so much easier said than done. Why is it so hard for us to just accept the fact that we get more emotional at home with our loved ones?
Well, first, I want to back up for 1 second because I want to talk about how we can manage those emotions better. So, at work, there's a framework, right? Like there's professional conduct, certain ways of behavior are not acceptable. But guess what we do not do? We do not bring that piece, a very small piece of formality, into our own intimate relationships. Whereas we can say, hey, Kwame, can we make rules such as when I'm talking, you won't interrupt me. And when you're talking, I agree that I won't interrupt you. Or can we make some agreements that if I'm not feeling okay, that I can actually decline the conversation until I recenter myself, kind of go do my breathing and reground myself until I feel better, and then come back into the conversation when I feel a little bit like better, right? Emotionally better and calmer. Usually those things are not given to a lot of people. You might say, Alice, I don't have time to talk about this. I don't want to talk about this. And I'm like, no, we have to talk about this right now. And then I'm just charging after you, not giving you the space to try to recenter yourself, right? So without sort of like guardrails put in place at home, and they don't have to be heavy guardrails, really light guardrails, it does help you recenter, reground, and remain calm. But without those guardrails, all it takes is for one person to just come charging at you, whether it's by raising my voice at you, whether it's by calling names, whether it's belittling you, right? There are many, many ways to escalate. And if you don't put in rules, that emotion that you're asking about earlier, like how can we manage the emotion at home? It's really by giving us ground rules that allows each of us to take that break to say, I'm being flooded right now. I am not my best self right now. I need to take a break, and to be able to allow the other person that break. But when we don't allow that, that is when the emotions escalate. And like many, many couples recognize that someone is usually escalating. Even stonewalling is considered escalating, right? If I want to talk to someone and they're saying, sorry, not now, and they just walk away from me, it can make my blood boil if that is a repetitive type of behavior.
Okay, let's focus on this word escalation, because I was in a difficult conversation about 17 minutes ago where the person on the other side just kept on trying to escalate, and I was trying my hardest to keep calm. Her name, what was her name? Oh, Alice Shikina. That was her name. So everybody, just that's a little Easter egg. So at the end of this episode, we have a bonus episode of my guest appearance on Alice's podcast. So check that out. We did a live role play. The one thing that you might not know about Alice is that she is a trained actor, and she used all of that to trigger the hell out of me. In
I
this,
tried.
you try. So let's talk about escalation, because I think this will be great foreshadowing for the role play that we have coming down the pike. But tell us what it looks like, the impact that it has, and then also what do we do about it? Because we recognize that there might be a pattern of escalation, but how do we get off of that pattern and get the conversation into a better trajectory?
Yeah, so I think like what I mentioned earlier, which is setting the ground rules, really helps set that up, because without the ground, here's a really critical thing. You cannot set up ground rules in the midst of the conflict. Never, ever, ever. It's never going to happen, right? If you start interrupting me and I go, hey, stop interrupting me, and we haven't made any agreements prior to this, there's like little to 0% chance of you saying, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, right? And so really people escalate because there isn't any agreement not to escalate. And as common sense as that sounds, as long as there's no rule in place, everything is fair game. That is how people act, right? I'm not saying it's fair game. People act in relationships. If there aren't any rules, they just continue to have bad behavior. And so if you want to de-escalate it, the de-escalation does not start at the time of the conflict. It starts when there is no conflict. That is when you start the de-escalation, because you set ground rules to say, when this happens, let's do this. When that happens, and create like a roadmap on how do we get beyond the moment when either of us is feeling escalated, so that we are not like pushing those emotions higher and higher until it eventually, years down the road, your relationship is eroded. There's no more respect for either party because you have done so much damage. And then it eventually leads to the demise of that marriage in a divorce, right? So it's not, the de-escalation does not start at the point of conflict. It starts prior to there being any kind of a conflict. That is critical.
This is so good because we're at over 1,800 episodes of the podcast. We've been doing this for 10 years and nobody has described it in that way. I think that is that is without a doubt the most powerful framing of de-escalation, because we are beginning the de-escalation process at the point where de-escalation doesn't work really anymore.
Yeah.
The idea that de-escalation begins before the conversation is notable. It is very unique. And that's where all the conversations fail. If you started without agreeing to those ground rules, then you're already at a disadvantage. And it seems like, tell me if this is a fair way of conceptualizing this. It sounds like when the other person is doing behaviors or engaging in behaviors that are escalatory, a lot of times it is not necessarily intentional, but the effect is escalation. And
Yes.
we escalate emotionally within ourselves because another person is breaking rules that were unspoken and they never agreed to.
Correct. And it's not even that there's rules, right? Sometimes there were no rules. And while societally we know that interruption is not good etiquette, if there isn't anything spoken about, hey, Kwame, in our relationship, let's both agree that we think this is a bad thing and let's not interrupt one another. If that's never been said, people do it. Even if it's
Mm-hmm.
bad etiquette, even if they've been taught as a kindergartner, hey, by the way, interrupting someone is not nice, right? You're probably teaching your kids, because they're still young, these rules. But once you go into an adult relationship, very frequently, people do not follow anything that looks like normal etiquette when people are feeling emotional.
Mm. What, based on your experience, especially with divorce mediations, when you think about the conversational mistakes that people make that lead to escalation and lead to feelings of disrespect, what would you say are the most frequently mentioned things and the most damaging things that you've seen? As a negotiator, presence is everything. The moment your attention splits, even for something productive like capturing every word of a conversation, you lose ground. And for a long time, that was the real tension in high stakes meetings. I felt like I could either be fully in the conversation or I could make sure nothing fell through the cracks. Granola ended that trade off. Granola is an AI powered notepad built for people who want to perform at their best in every meeting. And here's how it works. You take your own notes, the way that you normally would, capturing what matters to you, and in the background, Granola securely transcribes the whole meeting. And when it's over, it brings everything together into clean, structured, actually useful notes. What was decided, who owns what, and what comes next. And because Granola works through your device's audio, it integrates seamlessly into whatever video conferencing tool that you're already using. No new setup, no extra apps jumping into your call. It works alongside you, invisibly. The first time I used it, I noticed something almost immediately. I was more engaged, asking sharper questions, listening more strategically. Because I wasn't splitting my focus, I was fully present. Granola isn't there to think for you. It's there so you can think better. If you want to show up sharper in every meeting, try Granola free for 3 months at granola.ai/Kwame. That's granola.ai/Kwame to get your time back. Get 3 months free at granola.ai/Kwame. Owning a home is amazing until it's not. One minute everything's fine, and the next you're dealing with a burst pipe, a furnace that stopped working in January, or an electrical issue that just came out of nowhere. And here's the thing, your regular homeowner's insurance, it usually doesn't cover that. The day to day wear and tear, plumbing failures, HVAC breakdowns, electrical issues, you're often on your own. And that's where HomeServe comes in. Think of it like a subscription for your home. For as little as $4.99 a month, HomeServe administers plans that have your back when things go wrong. When something on your plan breaks down, you call their 24/7 hotline and they handle scheduling a repair with a local experienced licensed professional, no panicked contractor search, and no scrambling. HomeServe has been helping homeowners like you for over 20 years, and they have a trusted network of over 2,600 local contractors, nearly 4.5 million customers, a 4.8 out of 5 post-repair rating, and an A-plus Better Business Bureau rating. So if I ever needed this, and honestly every homeowner eventually does, HomeServe is exactly what I'd use. Join the millions of customers who trust HomeServe and enroll today for 50% off your first year. Go to homeserve.com/Kwame. That's homeserve.com/Kwame to enroll today for 50% off.
I would say the most important thing that I see not happening is acknowledging what has been said. And you talk a lot about how to do that, right? It's not about saying, oh, yeah, I understand what you're saying. And it's not about, I hear you, right? It's literally saying, okay, let me make sure that I understand your perspective and repeating it all back. And so people don't do that. And so can you imagine if you're in a relationship for decades where I say something to my spouse, they don't hear me, not really. They're not really hearing my message. And then they respond, but their response is not addressing anything that I said. Now I'm going to respond to what they said, right? But there's also not listening going on with me as well. So there's a lot of where people can have lots and lots of very long drawn out conversations where no one is actually listening. And when I say listening, I mean processing the information that you're getting from the other person. Listening is not just hearing words. It is processing it, understanding it, and then responding. So there is normally 2 steps. You say something, I respond, right? But in between, there's a very important step that most people miss, and that is the acknowledgement of the message. To say, let me understand your perspective. This is what you're saying, or this is how I'm understanding what you're saying. And when I do that, that gives you space and room to say, actually, you got 90% of it right, Alice, but you missed this one critical piece. Let me reiterate it so that you catch it. And that is where real communication happens. And that is where people can de-escalate.
Yes. Oh, this is so good. And it reminds, Simone, maybe you could look this person up because I want to give proper attribution. But one of my favorite quotes about communication is the biggest challenge in communication is the assumption that it has occurred.
Right.
And what often happens is we have 2 people talking about vastly different things on somewhat related topics, getting increasingly emotional about the process. And what we have to really break this down, because even though you said it and you've articulated it perfectly, I know people aren't going to get it because it's so counterintuitive and so different from how everyday conversations happen, because we have become so acclimated to poor communication skills that we don't recognize that it is poor communication. So let's break down. We have what somebody says, we have the response, and then we have the acknowledgement. And now there's somebody who's listening to this podcast who says, okay, Alice said we have to acknowledge it. Let me do that in my next conversation. Your partner goes on this 90-second, it says something for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, which feels like forever, but is not really that long of a time in objective terms. And then what you say is, I hear you, and then respond. Tell me what you think about that.
Yeah. So I always tell people, please put these 2 phrases in the garbage can. I hear you and I understand. Because you don't know if you've actually heard them, and you don't know that you actually understand unless you get confirmation. The person who was speaking is the only person who can verify that as you, as the listener, understands and has heard. And so that is just not a sufficient, like, you're not showing that you heard me when you say I hear you. That is literally a throwaway phrase, right? And so to say, okay, what I'm hearing you say is, and you say the whole thing, that is the point I'm going to say, Kwame heard me. He totally understands what I'm saying. You don't have to say it verbatim. You can paraphrase it. You can say it from your own perspective, but I just want to understand that you understand, right? But you cannot tell me I understand. That is not sufficient because we have no proof. Maybe you
Yep.
don't understand and you just say the phrase, I understand. And then we move on. And so here we are continuing a conversation where potentially you have not understood me at all. And we're continuing a conversation. So you can see how that gets derailed as we go 15, 20 minutes in, where you have not fully grasped what I said at the very beginning of the conversation. And now we're 20 minutes deep into the conversation where you're not fully grasping my perspective. And you
Yep.
can see how that's frustrating for people, right? Because they're talking and thinking, okay, you said I understand, but you're still not understanding. And I have to repeat myself. And then you mentioned, in my podcast, how people repeat themselves when they feel like they're not being heard. And so
Yes.
that piece of it is really acknowledging what they've said, is really to help them be seen, help them feel understood, help them be acknowledged, right? And
Hmm.
without that piece, which most people do not do, and mind you, this is usually doing difficult conversations. It's not about like, oh, where are we going to go for our Hawaii trip, or what do we want to eat for dinner today? It's mainly when it's getting really testy and somebody's really upset about something. Oh, Kwame, how many times have I told you, like, on Mondays and Wednesdays, it's your turn to make dinner, and I come home and dinner's not ready, and it's really upsetting, and this and that, right? In those times, you want to slow it down and say, let me make sure I'm understanding. Like, you're not happy with me because we made a previous agreement that I was supposed to make dinner on Mondays and Wednesdays, but then you came home, you're expecting dinner. I'm here. Clearly there's no dinner, and that is upsetting to you. Is that correct? Yes. Now we're on the same page. Now we understand what's happening,
Yes.
right? But if you jump in and go, hey, what's the problem here? Like, I'm finishing watching a movie. It can wait. We're no longer communicating.
Yes. This is so powerful because that last example is how normal humans talk.
Right.
And that's also why normal humans have trouble with relationships. Right? That is exactly the problem. And now this is big because as you were talking, tell me if this is fair, because this is a thought that I've had that I've never had before. And I'm thinking that when you're in a conversation and you're actually saying something, there's no such thing as neutrality. So the assumption is either the thing that you say either moves us forward in some direction or moves us backward. And even if you're saying something and it doesn't really move us in a direction, the opportunity cost is negative, right? So it's either positive or negative. So I think what people often miss is this, because the person goes and they speak for a while, and then you just respond to what they said, and then the person says, you're not listening to me. And then the person will respond and say, of course I'm listening to you. How else would I have responded to what you're saying? Right?
This happens frequently. I feel like that example is a very good example of how marital strife happens, where someone says, you're not listening to me, and you feel like I am listening, right? And you say, I have responded. But the issue is that the thing that you're responding to is not addressing their message. And that is why they're feeling like, hey, you're not listening to me because you didn't catch that message, right? Because you were so busy defending yourself, you didn't hear. Like in the first example where I talked about, where I said, like, you're supposed to make dinner on Mondays and Wednesdays, the core messaging there is probably how it's making your spouse feel that you're not owning up to the agreement that you made. It's not about the fact that dinner's not on the table at that moment. It sounds like it, right? If you were to just take the words verbatim, you'd be like, oh, well, I'll be finishing this movie in a second and dinner will be there in an hour. You haven't heard the message, which is, I don't feel special, I don't feel valued, or I don't feel respected.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But you have to like read between the lines. because I may not have said any of those words, but you have to have the emotional IQ to understand, okay, she's kind of upset about something. And it's clearly not just about the fact that dinner wasn't on the table. There's something deeper. So if you can articulate it for them to say, this is what I'm perceiving, and articulate it, then you can move forward, like you said. But you remain going backwards if you simply defend the fact that, hey, I was just going to put a pizza on and it's going to take 30 minutes. So stop yelling and screaming. It'll be ready in 30 minutes. That's not going to resolve the problem, right? Because you're not addressing the real problem, which is, I'm not feeling emotionally okay.
Yes. And that's part of the thing that people miss, because it's like, okay, obviously the problem is that there's not food on the table, but what she doesn't know is that food is coming in 30 minutes. So calm down.
Yes.
Yeah, say calm down. Calm down. The problem's being solved. But you don't know what the problem is because you didn't listen. And so when we listen, we also have to recognize that we need to listen for what is said and for what is unsaid.
Yes.
We have to listen to what the person actually said, but then also dig deeper into what it means. And sometimes with that summarization that you're giving, where you're demonstrating your understanding, you need to speak to what was actually said and then give a humble disclaimer and say, hey, and Alice, I might be wrong, but it seems like there's something deeper in this. And tell me if this guess is correct. You probably don't feel respected in this process, or something to that effect. And then they'll clarify. And that's how you get your deeper understanding. But I hear the concerns of somebody listening, and they're saying, okay, Alice, so what I'm supposed to do is somebody attacks me, and instead of defending myself, I'm supposed to listen and empathize. So I'm just going to sit back and let the person attack me. When do I get a chance to correct the record? Because it seems like I'm just supposed to sit here and take it indefinitely, and that doesn't make me feel good. So what say you to that, Alice?
So what I would say to that is that if you can address what you are hearing, what's basically nonverbal communication, right? The things that was not said, it will literally calm the other person down. So number one, you're not going to have a rabid dog coming at you because their emotions will come down. So at least you will not feel like you're being attacked. You'll visibly and energetically notice that they're like relaxing a little bit the more you see them. And then the next step is you get to respond. Right? So it's not about, oh, I get to get kicked and beaten and bruised and then I don't have my say. After you acknowledge what's been said, then you can say, okay, here's my response. I'd like to respond to that. Right? And you want to make sure that you're responding to the thing that you articulated, right? Which is, hey, it seems like you're upset because I'm not respecting our agreement. Maybe you don't feel like you're valued. So that's what I need to respond to. I should not be responding to, dinner's going to be on the table. It's going to take me 5 minutes to make mac and cheese. So don't freak out about it because it's only going to happen in 10 minutes, right? Because once you realize what the real issue is by acknowledging it, you can now respond more accurately.
Yes. Yes. Oh, this is so good, because to this point, Alice, I think you're giving words and understanding to a lot of dysfunctional conversations where people don't understand where the dysfunction is coming from, which leads people to just say, and I know as a mediator, you've heard this a ton, because I know I've heard it a ton. These are always my favorite ones, by the way, when the person gives their side of the story and then they end it with the other side, they're just crazy. They are completely irrational. They're just crazy. I'm like, oh, this is going to be juicy. Because in the mind of the person, let's go back to this dinner example, because in the mind of the person who's going to throw on mac and cheese, it'll be ready in 5 minutes. They're like, to this person on the other side, they are so incoherent right now that they don't even realize that there is not a problem. Let me give them the answer so they can realize there's not a problem. And then the person says, you're not listening to me. And then you think, this person is off the rocker because they came with a problem. I just solved the problem, but you didn't take the time to hear what the problem was. You're responding to something that isn't the true issue. And what I love about this is that you've given them permission to, you will get a chance to defend yourself. You need to defend yourself about the right thing, because otherwise you're defending yourself around shadows, wondering why your defenses aren't working, because you assume that you understand, but you don't understand. So you need to clarify. And it's like taking a test where the person who's grading you is the other person. You can't grade yourself on your own understanding of them. It just doesn't make sense.
Right, exactly. And so, yeah, so what you want to do is when you listen, it's more for listening for the message, because if you're in defense mode, you're just going to hear words and you're going to respond to the words, right? But what you're trying to do is you're trying to listen deeper, because you're trying to listen to what's the real emotion happening and what is the underlying message. In theater, that underlying message is called subtext. And whenever you read a script, you always, as an actor, have to consider what is the character's subtext. What are they trying to say with the words that are on the paper? So it's the same thing in real life. If you're yelling at me about something, Kwame, I need to figure out real quick, what is Kwame's subtext right now? Because I got to figure it out, because it clearly can't be about dinner, because he seems very, very upset. And so there's something else going on. What is that? So that type of presence, like just being present in the moment and being open and being curious, really takes discipline. And it's not about just hearing your words and responding to your words.
You know what's fascinating to me? The most effective negotiators and the most effective sellers have one thing in common. They make the other person feel seen. And that's exactly what's happening on Whatnot, and why this platform is growing the way it is. Whatnot is the largest dedicated live shopping marketplace in the country. You go live, you show your products in real time, buyers ask questions, and you answer them, and they keep on coming back. Not because of a listing algorithm, but because of a real connection. What's really compelling about the model is the scale that it creates. Sellers on Whatnot are moving 10 times more product than on other major platforms. The number of people hitting over $1 million a year has doubled, and buyers spend more than an hour a day in the app. Beauty, collectibles, electronics, luxury, fashion, full categories, full communities, all happening live. If you're building a business or looking to start one, this is really worth paying attention to. Download the Whatnot app today and get free shipping on your first order. Just search Whatnot, WHATNOT, in the App Store and start scoring amazing deals. Picture this. It's late at night. You're scrolling and you find that thing that you've been meaning to buy. You add it to your cart, you hit checkout, and then you realize that your wallet is all the way across the room. But that's when you see it. That purple button with all of your information already saved. One tap and you're done. That button is Shop Pay, and it's just one reason why Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet. Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind millions of businesses worldwide and 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. Whether you're just starting out or scaling up, Shopify gives you everything you need in one place. Inventory, payments, analytics, shipping, returns, no jumping between platforms, no chaos. And Shopify doesn't just sell you, it helps you to get found. With easy-to-run email and social media campaigns, you can reach your customers wherever they're scrolling or strolling. Plus, their 24/7 support means that you're never figuring it out alone. See fewer abandoned carts and more sales go with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/Kwame. Go to shopify.com/Kwame. That's shopify.com/Kwame.
It's hearing more deeply what's not being said, and like you're trying to express it using these other words. Sometimes it's about a different issue. People, like in mediations about inheritances, and they're arguing about money, but really, what's it about? About how their parents treated each one of them, right?
Yeah.
Let's say like, oh, well, I was always the one that was like treated poorly. Mom and dad never really you got everything. They loved you. You're the favorite. That's what we're really fighting about, but we're fighting about money. You see what I mean? Like people argue very frequently about some other thing when the core thing is something over in left field. It's not the thing that they're talking about.
Wow. So essentially, these are proxy wars. more or less.
Basically, yes.
Yeah, yeah, so we pick a field of battle that we feel comfortable with, and so it sounds like a lot of times there is a deep need to be understood, a deep-seated issue, and you don't feel comfortable talking about that. Maybe it makes you feel too vulnerable, and then you subconsciously essentially lying in wait. It's like, you know what, Alice at some point is going to make a mistake, and then I'm really pissed off about the way she made me feel before, but now dinner's late. Ha ha! Now this is why you're terrible. It's about the dinner. It's like, the level of emotionality that came seems like it's a little bit bigger than mac and cheese. Maybe we could explore this.
Yeah. So I think the way to de-escalate in those situations, first of all, is really to try to hear the emotions that's coming out, right? To say, and I always caution people, don't use the words angry or mad or pissed off, because those are things that no one likes to be labeled as, and you're just going to cause a dumpster fire to become a bigger dumpster fire. And so you want to really use, emotions where it's like, it sounds like you're frustrated. It sounds like you're feeling unhappy. You're feeling like you're not satisfied with my actions, right? So think of other emotional words. Don't just go up and be like, Kwame, it sounds like you're mad at me, because that is really going to make you angrier. It's not going to do much good, right? So I don't want people thinking like, okay, Alice and Kwame said I need to go label the emotion that I'm sensing, and then all of a sudden it turns into like this really huge fight. I'm not mad. That's not what I'm arguing about this for, right? That's going to come out. That's what's going to come back at you, right?
Yes.
Or something like that. So you want to be very careful about labeling the emotion to say a very specific emotional thing that is something beneath anger. It's going to be, I'm feeling devalued. I'm feeling unloved. I'm feeling unseen. I'm feeling unheard. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling sad. These are the types of things that people are feeling, and it comes out and looks like rage. It looks like rage. It looks like anger, but it's something deeper. And like you said, it feels too vulnerable to name it.
Yes.
Right? So you hide it with a blanket called anger. So you want to be able to peel that layer off, but peel it off gently and say, I'm sensing like, you're not feeling heard by me. Yes, that's exactly what I'm feeling. I feel like you're not listening at all. Right? And now we have a real conversation, because now not only have you acknowledged them, you see them. Everyone wants to be seen, Kwame. Like, that is the basic thing, human need, emotional need. Everyone wants to be seen. And conflicts come up because people do not feel like they are seen. Most of the time in workplace conflict litigation, it has nothing to do with the law. It has nothing to do with the company broke a law. It's because the employee or the ex-employee feels like they were never seen or heard by the company, that no one would listen to them. HR wouldn't listen to them. And so they had no choice but to go to a lawyer, because the lawyer offered them the only voice that they could have, because they wanted to be seen and they wanted to be heard. They may not have a legal case, but it's the emotional need to be seen that is driving a lot of people to go seek out lawyers, because they're like, I need to be seen. I want them to hear my side.
Yes.
Ooh,
This is powerful, because everybody in the conversation wants to be seen and wants to be heard. And sometimes it seems as though the biggest challenge is sequencing. Well, who gets seen and heard first?
Well,
And so let's break this down, because it's important to understand how you're feeling in the moment and how those feelings will make it difficult for you to listen and hear. Because, and we talked about it in the episode we're going to share later on my guest appearance on your podcast, how just the more emotional you are, the less available your skills are under duress. So everything that we're saying kind of seems easy to do in terms of what is required, but it's the emotionality that makes it more difficult. So I want people to be able to read those emotional signals here really well. So what is it in the moment that makes it hard for us to listen when that is exactly what our partner needs the most in that moment?
Well, whenever you're feeling attacked, you're immediately going to go into defensive mode. And then when you start to feel defensive, you go into fight, flight, or freeze mode, which then shuts your executive functioning down. So it's sort of like a domino effect, or you push one domino down and several of them just fall down. And so, if you're at least able to, this is very difficult in a moment when you're upset or defensive, to at least be able to repeat back everything that you heard the other person say, it does help your brain go back into like functioning mode, right? You can start to have more access, but the more emotional you are, because maybe I'm feeling defensive, you're attacking me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's attacking me. All this stuff is going on in my brain, right? How rude. I can't believe it. I was just sitting here. Now Kwame's just giving me insults, right? All of that stuff is making it so I can't think. I can't think straight. I can't figure out what I want to say. So if I can at least try to repeat back what it is that I heard you say in its entirety, it will help restore my executive functioning of my brain so that I can listen, like going forward in the conversation. So you want to try to restore your listening capability, because that listening capability gets interrupted every single time you get defensive.
Yep.
So if your spouse is coming at you, you're going to be defensive. You might even say, oh, here we go again. Same thing every single week. He or she is coming after me with the same thing, and you're already feeling defensive. Now you're already losing your ability to hear and listen. So you have to try to re-regulate yourself. So the two ways to re-regulate is to either do what I just said, which is to repeat back. But if you feel like I can't even do that right now, I can't even repeat it back because I can't even hear it. That's when the previous rule, the ground rules that we talked about earlier, had you set the ground rules to say, hey, if I call for a timeout, I need that timeout, you take the timeout. But that timeout needs to be prior to any kind of conflict. Remember we talked about that?
Mm-hmm.
So agree to it before, then I can say, Kwame, I need a timeout. Let me come back to you in 10 minutes. And I go away and I can re-regulate myself, take some deep breaths and come back. If, however, I did not make any ground rules beforehand, if I say to you, Kwame, right now is not a good time. I need to go take a break. Chances are you're going to be like, why? Answer my question. Like, why are you walking away from me every single time? Every time I want to have a serious conversation with you, you just walk away. Right? So this is, again, that dance. So you want to interrupt the dance by setting the ground rules, and the ground rules will help you like really de-escalate. Like I said, all conflict resolution gets de-escalated prior to the conflict, and it's in the same instance.
Brilliant. This is so helpful. And one thing that I've done, and I think I mentioned it in your episode coming up too, when I don't know what to say next, the next thing I say comes in the form of the question. But following that, as it applies to this situation, when I have a quick response, like the person said something and I feel like, oh, I need to clap back. Oh, I need to set the record straight. Oh, I need to say something. That is a sign that I'm not thinking clearly.
Yes.
That is what I take that as. The faster the response, especially if the response comes as they're still talking, I am immediately skeptical of that response, because there's a difference between an emotional thought and a strategic thought. The emotional thoughts will always come first. So my habit that I do is whenever I feel like I need to respond very quickly, and that's when I trigger the listening, where I say, okay, my goal right now is to listen very, very, very thoroughly and deeply. That's what I need to do in this moment. And so it just creates a new reflex. And I want to revisit going back to the original question, because this was a great answer, because I was talking about what are the things that lead to the biggest challenges in these relationship conversations. And you talked about the need for acknowledgement, or the failing to acknowledge what was said. And we've spoken for like 20 minutes on that topic, which demonstrates the fact that it is not a surface level thing. There's so much depth to this, and it is the lack of understanding that holds us back from actually leaning into acknowledgement and really what it means and why it's so difficult to do. And if I were to push you to give something else, like a number 2, so it's the failing to acknowledge what was said. What is another thing that causes struggles in these relationship conversations?
Well, I like to do a 1A, because even if you don't agree with what the person is accusing you of, just acknowledge it. If I say, Kwame, you lied to me, let's say your first instinct is to be like, I do not lie. Like, I can't believe she's accusing me of lying. And then all of a sudden, right? But just be like, wait a minute. Okay, so you think that I lied to you. You don't have to agree. So that's really, really important. I want to stress that, because people feel like, I need to defend my honor. I am not a liar. I never lie, right? It doesn't matter. Does not matter. Does not matter. Just be like, what I'm hearing you say is you feel like I've lied to you. That is not, that is not saying that you agree, right? All you're saying is, this is what I'm understanding. Now, oddly enough, people will interpret that as, oh, yes, I'm so glad that you agree with me. Like, people will think that, right? When you say, hey, Alice, you've said, I think you think I've lied to you. And I'll be like, yeah, I'm glad you agree. I'm glad you admit it. That's literally how people will hear it. But it's important to acknowledge, right? So that's my 1A. So the other thing that people need to do, I think they just really need to notice. And this is what I like to do. I like to tell people, when the next time you're upset, I want you to do a body scan and notice, where is that upset showing up? Is your chest tightening? Are your temples throbbing? Do you clench your jaws? Try to figure out what's happening. And you can even do it by yourself. Imagine something that makes you really, really angry and get yourself sort of like physically angry by imagining that thing, and notice, where is it going in your body? So that's really important step, okay, to do by yourself. That's like personal work. And then it's much easier when you actually start to get angry. You'll notice the physical sensation. That is what's going to clue you in that you're upset. Like your body will give you the first hint. Before you notice the emotion itself, you're going to notice, oh my gosh, my temples are throbbing. And then you're going to be able to say, oh, I've got to take a minute. I have to go and I tell people, you can just say, let me run to the restroom. Let me go get a drink of water. You can use those moments to try to recenter yourself, do your box breathing, where you breathe in, hold, and exhale, right? Whatever technique you want to use, you can just excuse yourself and be like, hey, I'll be right back. Let me just run and get some water, or I forgot something, or the mailman is here, right? These small things to like make a little bit of time, but it's important to recognize that you're getting emotional. And a lot of times people don't necessarily recognize it. So I teach people how to recognize the emotions in their body. How does it feel somatically? So that when it happens, you will immediately be like, oh, this is the sign I'm getting upset.
Yes. That
So
is
it's
good.
flip.
That's so important. And I think one of the things that we have to recognize is, and this is a critical part of emotional intelligence, is realizing that we won't always know without paying attention to these clues. And I think there's an assumption that we will know when we're off track, when we're not feeling good, and those type of things. But it is the assumption that we are emotionally stable when we're not that really can really mess us up sometimes. That's really good. One thing that I've heard when it comes to interrupting people, where the person interrupts frequently, they would say something to the effect of, well, the way that I talk is that when you say something and then I have a thought, I want to jump in and let you know that I'm listening by saying my thought. Or sometimes you say something and then it reminds me, or I want to address that thing that you said. And so I'm afraid that I'll forget if I don't interrupt you right there. So what would you say to the person who says the interruptions are necessary?
Take a note. I say take a note. So in my mediations, I do address that. And I say, if you get the urge to interrupt, jot down a note, because you will have time when it's your turn to address it. So it's totally fine to just jot down the notes and say, okay, I need to address this, right? It's better than interrupting someone. And so, yeah, so I don't think that interruptions are necessary. You can always, like, if you forget, you can put notes down and then you can address it when it comes. They're not necessary. And you know what's interesting, Kwame, is that when I do my mediations and I set the ground rules, I cannot tell you, it happens almost every single time. Once I set the ground rules, people abide by them. Like couples who've been fighting, they will be like, oh, and then this and this, and then they go, oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted, right? Because they agreed. I said, is everyone in agreement? Yes, yes. So when they break it, they're very cognizant about it, and they're very conscientious about addressing the fact that they accidentally interrupted, and they apologize for it, which probably doesn't happen as often if they're not in a mediation. But it's because the rule itself is guiding their behavior. If they agree to the rule, they're going to be like, oh, oops, I'm sorry. I agreed to not interrupt and I'm doing it. I apologize, right? But if there isn't that rule, it goes back to the rules, right? Without the rules, I have nothing to apologize for. Okay, I'm showing bad behavior. Who cares? I never said that I wasn't going to do it. You never said you weren't going to do it. So we just continue the bad behavior. But if we agree to not do it, people are like, oh, oops, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You go ahead, Kwame. Go ahead and finish. Right? That kind of dialogue happens almost every single time we mediate because those rules are guiding the conversation and the behavior of everyone in the room.
Yep. Oh, that's good. Okay, let me push you on this. I'm sharing things that I've heard in the past. And so what if they don't think interruption is a big deal? It's not a big deal. It doesn't cause that much damage. Based on your experience as a mediator, especially divorce mediations, what's the impact of interruption?
The impact of interruption, number one, it signals to me that you are probably not listening and you're waiting to speak your turn and you kind of jump the gun. So you're already waiting. You're like, I have this thing I want to say and I couldn't wait till they finish, so I'm going to say it. So it signals you probably were not even comprehending the information coming your way because you were just sort of like so anxious about saying your piece that you just jumped in early. Right? So then what happens is I usually say to someone who interrupts, okay, if you're going to interrupt me, at least let me know what it is that you heard me say. And I guarantee you, they will not get an A+ on that assignment. They will be able to say like maybe 50%, maybe less. And then what will happen is they will start to realize I'm not actually listening as well as I thought I was.
Yep.
Because listening takes a lot of mental activity. And if you are waiting to say your piece and you're rehearsing what you're about to say, you are not able to process the information coming from the other person at all. And I see this all the time because I will say, oh, you know what, Kwame, can you just let me know what it is the other person had to say? And if you were sitting there rehearsing what you're about to say, you're suddenly going to be caught like a deer in the headlights. And you're going to say, you know what, I'm really sorry. I have no idea what was just said. This happens. This actually happens. And people are shocked every time when they realize they've been talking for 3 minutes. And the other person who looks like they're listening does not remember a single thing that was just said in the last 3 minutes because they were rehearsing their own script.
Yep. One of the things that I've been seeing, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is let's say there's a mediation and a person is talking and they've talked for about, let's say, 20 to 40 seconds. And then the person interrupts. And then the person who was interrupted says, how are you responding to what I'm saying if you don't understand the point that I'm making? And the person tries to prove that they're understanding by rehearsing what was just said for the first 40 seconds. And then the person says, you didn't understand my point. And they say, how did I not understand your point? Because I just told you what you said. And I said, and then the person would respond by saying, you heard 30%. There was more that was going to be said. How can you understand that which was yet to be articulated? Can you break down what's happening? Because I recognize this is a bizarre disconnect that happens a lot of times in these conversations.
And you're asking for a friend, right, Kwame?
I'm asking for a friend. I hope that Freudian slip can be edited out. Help me, Alice. Help me. Okay.
Okay, so which side? So are you the side, or is your friend on the side where they're not being able to finish everything?
Correct.
Okay. So basically, I would just ask the permission, because a lot of times when you ask the permission, when someone gives you the permission, this is a psychological thing that's used in sales, right? In sales, someone will say, hey, Kwame, I'm calling you up. I'm doing a cold call. And I say, hey, Kwame, is it okay if I share with you for 1 minute sort of what we do? And once you say yes, you're going to listen much more deeply than if I never asked you for permission. So in the same way, you want to use that same psychological tool and say, hey, spouse, I understand you think you know what I'm going to say and you want to just respond to it earlier. Would you please give me the opportunity to just say all of it first? You can tell me what it is that you heard, and then you can respond. So you kind of set up the little guideposts, and you're going to ask for the permission. And that permission is not so, oh, there's a power dynamic. That's not about that. It's that when someone says yes, saying, okay, yes, I will let you finish. Now they're going to abide by the thing that you just asked them because they said yes, they will allow you to speak the whole thing. Does that make sense? So you're doing a psychological thing where you're getting them to agree that they will shut up until you finish. And now they have to shut up because they've said that they will shut up. Does that make sense?
Yes. This is so interesting. So it's like a meta negotiation, a
Yes.
negotiation within the negotiation.
Yes.
So we have an issue, and now we have an issue within the issue. Let me negotiate the ability to complete my thought, and then we could go back to the larger negotiation once we
Yes.
have.
Yes, because
Okay.
especially if you're finding that while you're trying to negotiate, you're getting cut off, and then there's negotiations about why it's okay to cut you off, right? Then yes, it is a negotiation within a negotiation to say, okay, I understand that you know what I'm going to say, but can I just? It makes me feel better if I just can get everything out. Can you just wait until I finish? I would really appreciate it, right? That's that mini negotiation, and once you win that, then you can finish everything, and more than likely, the other person will say, "Are you done?" And then you can say, I'm done. If you can let me know what it is you understood and then respond, I would appreciate it. Now you set it up. You've set it up so that they have to say everything back to you. And if they weren't listening, guess what's going to happen? They will not succeed at telling you what it is that you said. So I do that frequently in my own relationship where I say, I don't think you're listening. I was listening. I'm like, okay, can you tell me what it is that I was just saying for the last few minutes? And usually it's like, it was something about this play. And I'm like, that's all you got? Something about this play? And he was like, yeah, I'm really sorry. I was not listening.
Yep.
So it's important to catch it because if there's no communication, you want to be able to remedy that, right? You want to like fix it so that there is communication. And very frequently we live in households where there is no communication. Like we're all talking and there isn't a communication. There's no messages that are actually being received by one another.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's important to do that mini negotiation inside the conversation to say, can I just, if you let me finish everything, that would be helpful. And then win that one. And then you can say the whole thing and then have them repeat it back. Because for all you know, if the other person's rehearsing their script, even if you finish, they will not have heard anything you had to say. So that's important. That's important information to know that that's going on in someone else's head.
For
Right?
sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I think all of this that we're talking about is simple, but not easy.
Correct.
Right. It's, we can understand it. Everybody listening to this can understand it, but executing under pressure, under the weight of emotionality, that's where it becomes difficult. And one of the things that I've focused on, especially if the person says that you're not listening, if you're the person who's accused of not listening, that often makes us feel defensive, and we want to say, yes, I am listening, because the accusation of not listening kind of comes across as a value judgment. It's not just you're not listening, you're a bad person because you weren't listening. That's how it's perceived. So they defend themselves instead of demonstrating listening. So for me, when I'm on the receiving end, if somebody says they're not listening, that I'm not listening, I say, first of all, I apologize, because whatever the truth is, I've done a poor job of making the person feel heard. It's not just about the biological effect of the sound waves reverberating through the ear, hitting our tympanic membrane and going into our brain. That's not what listening really is. It is about the ability to then reflect back the understanding to make the person feel heard in the process. So the immediate response is an apology. And then I say, great. So now in my mind, obviously not aloud, that would be psychotic. Then in my mind, I say, let's play a game. Cool. You're not feeling heard. I am going to listen to you better than you've ever been heard before. And so there's just no way if that is the barrier, not being heard or not feeling heard is the barrier, that's easy to solve for, because I'm just going to listen so well that I completely eliminate that from a point of contention. And so I think that is a mindset that we could utilize when we realize that in a lot of these cases, even beyond the substantive issue, the bigger problem is the lack of being heard. And if you solve that problem, sometimes miraculously, the substantive issue seems to disappear or become not as big of a deal.
Yeah. And, sometimes it's just fine to say, if someone's like, hey, you know what? You're not listening to me, just to give them 100% undivided attention. It could be that you were texting very briefly, someone texting, you're like, oh, yes. And someone's going to be like, you're not listening, right? Because there's always a distraction, right? Or maybe your kids are doing something, you're watching them, or you're picking something up, or whatever it is. So it's a good space to just say, okay, let me just reset. Let me give you my undivided attention and let me listen. And then after you listen, to acknowledge the messages that you received, and then it'll probably lower the emotionality of the situation. So instead of being defensive, just to say, you know what, if I didn't seem like I was listening, let me listen now.
Yep.
As opposed to, let me prove to you that I was listening in the past. It's more like, let's do a reset, and I'm going to go ahead and listen now. If I wasn't listening, whatever I was doing, I am changing my behavior. Whether it's checking a text message or whatever it is, right? You're changing the behavior going forward. So I think the most important thing for conflict resolution is always looking forward to how can we fix it. And very frequently couples rely on arguing about the past. You always do this. Yesterday you did this. Last week you did this. Last month you did this. And I'm always like, can we just focus on fixing it? Let's fix it. We don't do that with our cars, right? We don't complain about how the car wasn't working last week. No, we take it to the shop and we get it fixed. So everyone treated their relationship like a broken car. We don't argue about why the car's not working. It's still not working for days on end. We just go and we get it fixed. So in the same way, if the communication is broken, don't argue about how it was broken in the past. Just fix it going forward. And so I think that if you can have a forward-thinking mindset when it comes to conflict in relationships, to say, okay, if something wasn't working, how can we actually fix it? Or if you're not happy, how can I fix it? Or if you don't like my behavior, how can I fix my behavior? Or whatever it is, right? Let's look forward as opposed to in the past. That is what drives a lot of conflict that's repetitive in relationships.
It's powerful. And Simone, I know you have been waiting patiently. What are your thoughts? What questions do you have?
Well, as Kwame told you, I have a podcast in Spanish. I invited a guy that was an expert at listening. I asked him, what is actually listening? And he said, listening is helping the other person make their point. And then another guy told me, I asked him, because I like to ask that question. And the other guy told me, listening is avoid thinking about an answer before listening to the last word of the other person. So I would like to ask you both, what is listening for you?
Do I go first? So for
Yeah.
me, listening is really deeply understanding the other person's perspective. So listening to me is not just about with your ears. It's with your heart. It's with your mind. It's with your soul, right? To really deeply say, you know what? Let me put myself in your position and let me understand what it feels like to be you. That to me is really, really good listening. It's profound listening.
Yep. And let me go deeper on that too, because I believe the exact same thing. And I try to take it to the most logical extreme I possibly can, while still having the humility to recognize that despite my best efforts, it is not possible for me to fully understand, but I'm going to do the best I can. So I'll give a story. When Kai was much younger, like 2 or 3, when we would have conversations and things like that. And I recognize, especially in situations of discipline, I wouldn't raise my voice or anything, but there would be a stern voice saying, hey, Kai, you can't do that. That's wrong. That's right. Whatever it happens to be. And I realized, okay, let me actually look at this from his perspective so I can communicate in the way that would be appreciated or understood at a deeper level. And so I tried to literally put myself in his perspective. He's 2 or 3 feet tall at this time. He's tiny and I'm larger. And so I realized, my message will be missed because of just the intimidation of being a larger human at this time. So going forward, when I would discipline, I would get down on his level so we could be more the same size, so there wouldn't be an intimidation factor. And so for me, when I'm listening, I'm asking myself, what do I physically look like to the other person? What is their lived experience? They had this background. I have this background. Oh, okay. So think about, for me, coaching people or training people, I lived this. I studied psychology, was in a law school, studied law, practiced law in mediation. Conflict is fun for me. Like I'm at the point where the skills are exciting for me. And if I come in and I'm like clicking my heels in front of an organization, like, isn't this conflict great? They're like, no, it's like the worst thing that's ever happened to me. So I have to understand where they're coming from in order to really listen effectively. Because the thing is, we always listen from our own perspective. So as I'm absorbing the message, I'm trying to listen from their perspective as wholly as I possibly can. And then that allows me to get a better sentiment of what the message means to them beyond what it is that they're saying. So it's stepping into their shoes, but really trying to figure out what that really means. Are we on Zoom? Are we in person? Is it a phone call? All these things. I'm trying to perceive it in the realest sense from their perspective, and that helps me to listen effectively. It's like, how can I make my brain their brain for a moment? So we're trying to share a brain. That for me is listening. That's the depth of understanding I'm trying to go for when I'm listening to somebody. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much.
Yeah, this is great. And it's listening sounds so easy. Acknowledgement sounds so easy. But then you listen to a master at her craft like Alice describe it, and you're saying, I did not understand what understanding was. So Alice, we appreciate it. And if there was somebody who said to themselves, I'm looking for new podcasts on negotiation, or I want another book to read on how to improve my relationships, or maybe I'm having a mediation, who could they call and what resources should they turn to for such problems?
Thank you, Kwame. So I have a podcast called Negotiation with Alice, and Kwame was just a guest on there. So definitely check out that episode. And people can just go to my website, shikinamediation.com, Shikina. It's an Okinawan last name, shikinamediation.com. And they can see all of my mediation services there. And I've got an upcoming couple of books, actually. So the first one coming out is called Influenceable. That will come out next year. And then the other one, the one that's for all the listeners who are wanting some negotiation help in their marriages, is called Don't Sleep on the Couch: Winning More Arguments Without Losing Your Marriage.
Brilliant. Alice, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.